I'm Tess Gerritsen, and we are in Portland, Oregon. Well, the difference between true crime and real crime, I think for the most part, is that true crime and novel crime. When you're writing a crime novel, your villain is much smarter than the average killer. Unfortunately, most crime is very banal. Most murders happen, they're crimes of passion. They're crimes where the killer leaves behind a huge number of clues. And that's not very interesting for us, those of us who write crime novels. We want the brilliant villain. We want the villain who provides the right amount of challenge for the detective. So I think that's the major difference between real crime and fictional crime. For me, the starting point of any character is the voice. And I actually mean the physical voice, the sound of the voice. And if I can hear that voice, I can write that character. Sometimes it takes me weeks and I can't even get started until I hear somebody talking to me. And just that voice can tell you a lot about who they are. Is it a child's voice, a woman's voice, a man's voice? Is it well educated? Is it not? And as soon as I hear that voice, I can start to write from that point of view. So that's number one for me. Well, what I do is I take an emotion from a particular story that I've read. As an example, there was a story. This is actually not a crime story, but it's a story about a woman who was found dead in her bathtub. This was in the Boston newspapers, and they put her into a body bag and they sent her off to the morgue. And a couple of hours later, she woke up. So it's that emotion of, oh my God, you're a corpse, and all of a sudden you wake up in a body bag, and that launched a whole novel that did have crime in it. So it's very much for me, I think, searching for something that horrifies me, and that point of horror is what launches a story. I mean, I have every book that I've written, I can pretty much point to the moment when it was born, and the story was born, and it almost always comes from that, oh my God, that whomp in the chest. Well, Body Double came from actually two things that happened. The first was that I was in the autopsy room one day, watching the autopsy of a young man, and it really bothered me that when I found out that young man was my son's age. And I spent the whole autopsy watching it being done, but also thinking, is there anything worse than watching somebody you know get cut open on the autopsy table? And it occurred to me, yes, there is something that would be even more freaky, is to watch yourself get autopsied. If there is some way to do it, say you're your own ghost and you could see yourself get cut open on the table, that would be horrifying. So I had that idea. I thought, well, how do I make that happen? And then I read the story about the Weaver family. So I was thinking about, what is it like to be Francis? What is it like to know that you come from a line of murderers? Do you worry about poison in your own, in your own blood and your own genetics? What does it say about you? Do you worry that you're carrying some kind of a monstrous gene? This is the story that I need to write, and I ended up combining it with that horrifying thought in the autopsy room. And so Body Double is really about Maura Isles, the medical examiner, who I've already established is adopted. And she doesn't know who her birth parents are. And one day she comes home from a trip to find a dead body in her front, parked in a car, and it is her twin sister that she never knew she had. So she watches her twin sister get autopsied, in other words, having that same experience I had, which she's seeing herself get autopsied. And then she finds out later on who her birth parents are, and they are monsters. So Maura has to go through this whole process of, who am I? Why do I choose such dark things to study? Does it say something bad about me? Well, fans say many strange things, but I think probably the most bizarre one is I was on book tour with my book called The Surgeon. And The Surgeon is about a serial killer who operates on women before he kills them. And it's a pretty horrifying way of dying. And one man came up to get his book signed. He looked very ordinary, very mild-mannered, and he said, "Thank you for writing this book." I said, "Why?" And he said, "You allowed me to enjoy my fantasies." And he got his book signed and he walked out. And you have to wonder how many people found that very stimulating to hear about women who get tortured before they die. It's, I think there's a certain percentage of the human population that is disturbing in that way, but as long as they don't act on those impulses, it's their private affair, and better to live it out as a fantasy